Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Mitch Rap. Nope, No Limits, the Thriller podcast. Sorry, getting confused today, Mike.
Well, it's a bit of a different setup here for the boys. We got a curveball thrown at us and a couple of changes this morning, Chris. I say morning as we record.
Yeah, so I apologize for my audio if it doesn't sound. My audio is never the greatest. Yours is always better. But today I'm potting from work. Don't tell my boss. Yeah, we needed to get these in before vacation. I just moved back into my house after 2 months off and don't have time to pot at night, so we're making do potting during the day.
We've
The
always
things we
said,
do for love.
we've always said the doctor of the podcast is a busy guy. If our listeners don't know, that is a through line, a running joke here on the podcast. They're missing out on something because Chris, you do anything for this pod. You do it all. You're one
Dude,
of those guys
I
who needs like 30 hours in a day. 24 is just not enough.
no, especially considering like I only get like 5 hours of sleep. I could use some more sleep time. So
And everyone heard about well, I don't know. The patrons certainly heard. We did a special patron only podcast recording when we were hanging out and golfing after the Jack Carr event. And man, you got us up at what, 4:30 the day after meeting Jack Carr to go golfing and squeezing around before work. You're a madman over there, Chris. An absolute madman.
yep. Well, again, I had rare opportunity with U of M P A. I had to squeeze in as much as we squeezed more in under 24 hours than I think we ever have. We had dinner, breakfast, a book signing, round of golf,
Met
lunch.
Kevin.
We met Kevin. We got some mini pods in. We even like talked about Red Sky Morning, which was
Sure.
just idiots us. We should have recorded that.
Kitchen talk till what? Midnight? Talking Red Sky
Yeah,
Morning in the kitchen.
11:30. Yeah.
It was great.
So the things we do for the pod, man. Things we
Yeah.
do for the pod.
Yeah. So I said we're madmen, but you know who else is a madman? Ari freaking Shamron. Holy
Mm,
smokes. Is there a twist at the end of this book? And our patron Chris was right. She told us, wait for it, wait for it. And it came late. It came very, very late. But when it hit hard. It kind of changes my whole take on this book. It's a little bit
no,
like
very
when
much
we
so.
read The Peacock and the Sparrow. A couple of things along the way that took me out of the book, namely Yusef's conversation and his whole relationship with Dominique or Jacqueline, how you want to look at her Mossad name or her modeling name. Those kinds of things took me out of the story. In part one, I talked about how I didn't think it was too realistic that he'd be dating this supermodel. He'd
Mm,
take her for
that was our big hang
granted.
up.
Yeah, he'd bring up all about his history, his scars, Shaktila on like the first and the second date. It was just off. But now we learn, spoiler coming, Yusuf works for Ari Shamron. He's a deep cover plant that Ari
Deep
Shamron,
cover.
deep cover. Ari is the only one in the entire Israeli government who knows that he's undercover. And he picked him as a little boy, essentially, and trained him from a child and used a fake identity after the Shatila massacre, which was real. There was a Palestinian boy murdered by the Israelis during that time, and they chose to use that boy's identification and namesake as a deep cover plant. Ari Shamron is dirty. He is playing dirty.
Yeah, and would you say this is on par with like a deep state like type turn? Like, especially with the placement it comes in the book.
Sure.
I the whole time I'm reading it and I'm like, all right, this is interesting. It's going to be like sort of, you're not cookie cutter, but very, run it. I'm being too negative. Very standard thriller plot.
Mm,
The guy, we have a villain, we have our protagonist. There's some angst, the culmination. They go on this journey together, and then it gets resolved at the end. But to then add in this other layer of the fact that there was this deep cover agent, and like what we thought was going on was actually not what was going on the entire time. It's just it sort of like racks your brain. It's very similar to what you just said, Peacock and the Sparrow, where like it causes you to retroactively go back and relook at everything through a lens.
sure.
And I think this would be a good one to go and like reread, knowing what you know now, and see if you could pick up on more of those subtleties.
Yeah, completely. It really does that. And I think it makes the book all the better. Some twists
Mm,
don't land, and some twists make you question earlier moves by the author. Well, that doesn't fit with this piece, or that doesn't fit with why this character did that. It almost all falls into place once you get that little bit of information.
Everything makes sense.
It makes sense, right? It works. Where I think some of those twists are done by a lot of lesser authors simply for the shock factor. But for me, the shock factor and the wow of a twist only lands if it makes complete sense. You know, if it's watertight, if it's airtight and no leaks could get in, because you have to have everything else to that moment check out. And I think that happened here. And I really think Daniel Silva nailed it with that one. But a little downside, and something we talked about in the first part, is Gabriel Allon really the main character? And the events of the ending kind of, I think, do a disservice to him as a protagonist, in that he was getting played by both sides. He was getting played by Ari Shamron the whole time. He called him into service just as bait. He was used as bait for Tariq because Ari knew Tariq would come out of hiding or put himself in the open if he knew Gabriel Allon was after him.
Was hunting him.
And then he gets shot. Like, even the final action sequence is a chase, and he gets shot. He missed his shot earlier in Montreal. I was like, okay, I don't know about this guy. And he gets shot on the chase here. Did this book do enough to make Gabriel Allon the great protagonist I know he is? And so many people on our socials have told me, man, he's awesome. Keep going. You know, he's an amazing character. He does so much. But in this book, he's like my third or fourth favorite character.
Yeah, I think Daniel Silva is doing an interesting thing in the sense of setting up this imperfect protagonist.
Sure.
You know, if you look at some of our other ones in terms of James Reese, Scott Harvath, Mitch Rapp, we know in our heart of hearts that they're always going to come through.
Right.
They're always going to win. Yeah, I mean, I guess some of them have, you know, they have their losses, but this is like setting up to be like a little bit of a different character. Obviously, he's older, maybe a little bit past his prime. You know, he's been out of the game a little bit. So I think it does a good job at setting like realistic expectations for what Daniel Silva wants his protagonist to be, whereas not making him too OP, you know, not too, you know, like we're going to talk about this tomorrow, but Red Sky Morning, like the fact that essentially a James Bond type character where he needs to be the life-saving event in every single situation, and he's always going to succeed. That is not this character, but he still has like some cool, you know, attributes, spy characteristics. It does enough to intrigue me, but I will say, I at times definitely felt that he wasn't the main character of this first novel. To me, almost Jacqueline, Sarah, Dominique, she was more so the main character than Gabriel was.
And I love that because she's amazing. And her backstory, one of the best backstories I've seen in a thriller book. Her actions, I mean, she breaks out from Lila after being tied up on this bed. She gets the nail file in the bathroom, so she's got some hand-to-hand stuff. She shoots down Tariq after chasing him down the stairwell. Yes, he's his dying man, but and she even says, like, keep going, he's slow. He's sick, I can get him. But we're inside her mind, I think, so much more than Gabriel. And it's actually kind of neat seeing the protagonist's struggles from his like unrequited lover's perspective and the girl that kind of caused his downfall. In some ways, I know we can't directly blame her and she can't directly blame herself, but in some ways her love for him caused what he's going through. And we're not just in his head the whole time. I think if you pulled a Don Bentley, you know, first person take here, it would just be so psychological inside Gabriel Allon's head. And we didn't need that. So it's kind of interesting. We get to see really Jacqueline and even Ari Shamron in their conversations trying to psychoanalyze the main character and explain him to us, because he can't explain himself to us. He doesn't even know the restoration process that he needs to keep that metaphor alive, the painting and restoration metaphor. And seeing that through other characters, spending more time with her, It's actually a really neat way to do it. It's another one of those, like you said, subverting expectations or not just doing the cookie cutter mold of what a lot of these books do. The Ubermensch, the overpowerful superhero, can kill, shoot, spy, undercover, do everything he wants all on his own. And instead, it's more Jacqueline doing those things. And it leaves Gabriel a little more vulnerable. I would even say realistic. It's gritty, right?
for
Like
sure.
it's almost like a psychodrama of what he's going through. It's gritty and it's visceral of who Gabriel Allon is without needing to just tell us. You know, we don't like the exposition on this podcast. We don't see what he's going through. Instead, we let it develop through his relationship with other characters. And I think that's a brilliant move.
Yeah,
What
no,
would I like him to do
totally.
more? If we read another book, let's say we read two or three other Daniel Silvas, or we always like to do a second book, because you know our theory on this pod. Second books are hard in a series. If you have a great debut, really, really hard to get that second book up to par. I'd be curious to see. I don't know if we'll get through the whole series, but I definitely want to do a few more, you know, maybe not this year with all the new releases, but I really want to see what he does with this character because there's so many ways you can go, so many different places you could take this.
Yeah, and I think that's what intrigues me the most is the ability to see where Gabriel can go from here and
Sure.
how Daniel Silva wants to take that character. You know, how he wants to set up his relationship with Shamron. Does Jacqueline stay in the picture? You know, there's a lot of questions left at the end. Even, you know, one thing we didn't talk about in part one, but the fact that his wife is still alive, and
Right.
we get that scene where he goes and visited her. That was out of
Oh
the
my.
blue, very strange.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of that. I'm still confused by it.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, I guess she's in this state of permanent shock that she's borderline psychotic and has to be kept in this home. Ged doesn't even talk to him. I guess there's that little bit where like a glimpse of recognition, but you know, it's so like how does she stay in the picture like as this character where
Yeah.
he goes and visits her and does that relationship sort of regrow over time? Interesting tidbit that
Yeah.
Silva decided to put in there.
I wonder if that reaching out of her touching his face is really reaching out to the audience saying like, I'm going to be around. Don't forget me.
Mm,
Because we could very easily replace her with Jacqueline. And then all of a
sure.
sudden, Gabriel Allon has to start anew, start afresh, restore himself, heal himself with a new woman and what that's going to be like. But that touch on the face makes us question, slow down. Is Leia still in the picture? And long term, you could stretch that out what 5, 6, 10 books if you want to, and really play with what happens to her instead of her just being dead from the get go. I gotta imagine that's a plant. That's a
Yeah,
plant that's coming later on in the series for sure.
it's too much to put that in there and not want to use it for something later on. You know,
Completely.
but I can easily see her being taken, captured.
Sure,
Um, you know, for him to put that in there, she has to be used later on.
has
If
to.
not, it even makes it even more weird. You know,
It was so out of place that I'm just like, okay, there's a reason she's alive. Like
I, I almost
there
thought it was
has to
like a
be.
dream. I almost thought it was a
Yeah,
dream.
I wasn't sure if it was real or
The
not.
way the writing of it, and like you know, it's very surreal. And like this is one guy. What is he doing? Like, I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I
If
thought
it
he was
was a
visiting his
movie,
mom at first. You know,
oh yeah. If it's a movie though, you use like the blur edges on the camera, like you make it
sure,
very cloudy, almost dreamlike. And maybe when she touches the face, you kind of sharpen the picture to full HD, you know, which means you could go with it a number of ways. So yeah, interesting drop. I really wonder, and I think that's maybe the strength of the Kill Artist is it's a great book, but I think its real strength is it makes you need to know more about the universe of these characters. It almost like you kind of need book two, or I want to see
yeah,
what Gabriel Lana is doing now, 23 books later, or whatever it may be.
right.
It does such a good job building. And I think one of the newer books is A Death in Cornwall. And you said something in part one that you think Cornwall could play a very important role. The little boy Peel should stick around. This could be his Bishop's Gate, you know, his home base, his safe harbor, pun intended. It's a harbor. And we end the book. Great epilogue.
Actual,
Him coming back to Cornwall, flashing the lights. He know Peel sees him. Peel does the flashlight. I think that's a relationship to come. And the newest book, however many later, A Death in Cornwall, does it have anything to do with book one? You know, what happened in the
Mhm.
first scene of book one? Or is that just a happenstance? Do we go back to Cornwall for other reasons? Daniel Silva, I think, knows how to capture a reader's attention and make you need more in the universe
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
without there being action, because we have to get to the scorecard soon. And this, I don't know how you would justify a high action score here, but go to plot and buy-in. It's amazing what he can do with plot and buy-in at the expense of action.
I think we officially have to change this category from action to action suspense.
Right. Yeah.
So the only other thing we kind of haven't talked about is Tariq, the culmination of this lifelong struggle between these two adversaries. And what did you think of his final ending, his interactions with a real life character,
Yeah.
and the fact that he's just let go? Like,
Yeah.
I want to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, a couple of things. Did it rub me the wrong way on first view? Maybe. Do I like it more once you actually sit with it? I mean, before I answer, let me ask you. We've criticized on the pod when real life characters, particularly world leaders, are put into thriller books. What did you think when you saw it was the real Yasser Arafat? You get the real story of Yasser Arafat, and we're actually put in the middle of like a turn of the century, nearly a new wave peace talk, and it's Arafat and the UN. I usually don't like that, but I kind of liked it here.
I didn't mind it here.
I didn't
I don't know,
either.
like in the past, we've had like Putin be like the real Russian president at the
Right.
time, or
Zelensky
you
pop up
know,
on a train.
right, right. It kind of takes you out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
This didn't, because I guess it's older, so it's not as current. Although, like, talking about this book nowadays, very very prescient, obviously. But I didn't mind it that much.
Yeah.
But I didn't think that him just having a conversation with Tariq was going to stop Tariq from killing him. That to me was not believable.
That was my first reaction too of Tariq was on the warpath. He's a dying man. He was set up to be this visionary, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And his final act was going to be so grand, well thought out, well calculated. To have him turn away from that was a little tough. Now, the good side of all that is how it was grounded in their history together. It wasn't just,
Sure.
oh, he convinced me and I randomly agree with him, so now I'm leaving. It was, he's pulling on the heartstrings. And Arafat is that politician. He has changed his mind. He has gone from violent extremist to seeing that a political process for a two-state solution may be necessary, to needing to be a public face instead of just a revolutionary in the shadows. So Arafat has grown, but Tariq has not grown with him. And the fact that they had that shared history, how Tariq had worked for him when he had that revolutionary zeal, he saved his life when he was such an integral part of the revolutionary cause, and that Tariq was side by side with him through so much. And how Arafat played on the fact that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Arafat was still reminded of Tariq as that younger man, and how Arafat has come to see a different path forward for the Palestinian people that did not just include the revolutionary acts. And Tariq hasn't seen that yet. And Arafat is that skilled politician. They have that personal history. They have that bond. He was pulling on all of those chords. And because of that, I'm okay that Tariq had this moment of weakness, this moment of reconsideration. But in the moment, you're right, it fell flat. So looking back on it, it's like, yeah, there's a lot going on. That's a pretty deep conversation.
Very deep. Yeah.
But in the moment, I didn't buy it. I really didn't buy it. I was like, just
Yeah,
shoot him and
that's the
run.
problem.
Shoot him and
That's the
run.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other
I don't
thing
know.
is the
It's an
timing.
interesting take.
Yeah. The timing was a little off, and this stayed true on reread as well. Gabriel pulls up to the building and is like running in or convincing the doorman and the security to let him up. At the same time, Tariq is entering with the Tunisian dates. And I'm like, that conversation just felt a little long, slow, and methodical, that Gabriel and crew would have gotten there early, or the
Mm.
bodyguards outside would have came in. They were like, just leave the tray of dates and get out. Yet that conversation, if you actually tried to like play it out and record it, is minimum 3-5 minutes,
Oh yeah,
maybe
for
even a
sure.
little longer. And it's like pacing, something just in terms of writing style, pacing just was off in that little sequence. So it was good. In the end, I kind of like it more. But when I was first reading it, I was taken out of the moment too much.
Yeah, because you're building up to like this quick suspenseful thing. Like is Gabriel going to reach him?
Yeah.
He's there. He's the waiter. He's going to take out, and then it just comes to a standstill with this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
I
then
I,
just a
I
quick
totally agree with
shootout on
that.
the staircase. Gabriel gets
Right,
hit. Jacqueline is
right.
empowered, goes after him, shoots him in the back. End of story. It's like, hmm. I wonder if that's a little anticlimactic, but
A little bit, a little bit. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyways, this is a good book.
It's a
Good
good
book. I
book.
think
Good
we
book.
should. Anything else you want to talk about before we get to the scorecard?
Well, the one thing I would say, if that was an anticlimactic kind of race to the finish, I think a real big strength in terms of plot and maybe even suspense was going across the border. Everything in Montreal
Oh yeah.
into New York.
Montreal scenes were cool.
In
The
Montreal
underground
scenes
tunnels.
were really cool. We'll get to that in setting for sure, but Tariq is doing like SDRs. He's checking if he's followed. He's picking up his briefcase from the gun that the guy leaves him in like a cafe. They're going shopping for Jacqueline's clothes, but they're really doing a detection route. They're all underground, so Montreal was genius. He's got Lila and her passport as a backup for Jacqueline to use to get into the country. I think I really like the Montreal stuff. Almost felt like that could have been a more exciting way to conclude than that final scene. That final scene seemed rushed after all the really neat spycraft going on
The,
in Montreal, but
the build up to it. Yeah,
yeah. I do like when Tariq flips a switch though. They get into the US, Jacqueline's no
yeah.
longer needed, and dude just and we've seen that all along. That's one thing that Tariq as a villain, the score goes up and up and up. He can change cover, he can change identity physically, but he can also do it emotionally. When he flips, once they're in the country, don't need Jacqueline, he just flips and is like so much more rude to her and just a different person than the suave, let's go shopping. You're on a date with me, a diplomat, we have to pretend to be a couple. And now he's just like holding her down in the car with a gun pointed at her, driving for hours. He just flipped the switch.
Yeah, no, that's perfect description of. Oh, he's the chameleon. He's
Yeah,
definitely the
for
chameleon.
sure. For sure. For sure. One of the better villains in that regard.
Hmm.
What do you say about the scorecard, unless you got anything else?
No, no, that's it. All right, so we're gonna change this officially to action suspense. Out of 10, I'd probably give it an 8. I just think when we got some action, it was good, but the suspense brings it up. Like I think, like when we left off in part one, that scene in the apartment, the spycraft that we got definitely elevates this book.
Sure.
And I think I would add in like that spycraft in Montreal. A little bit of the chase scene once we get into DC we're in New York, sorry. Yeah. And then, like we said, the little bit of action we got with Jacqueline and Lila in the hotel or Allon's, every time we saw him like I saw like the capabilities, like whether or not you want to argue that he's the greatest, I would say no, but I elements are there.
Yeah. I think an 8 is justified because of
It
so
might be a
many.
little high.
It might be a little high, and because of so many suspense points that to me are only suspenseful because the plot is crafted so well and because the characters are
Mm.
crafted so well. I'm not necessarily going to give it a boost on action suspense. It's more like plot character development suspense. So I'm going to go down to the 7, and that really is going to account for the action scenes being dismal. I mean, even the ones of the shootout in Montreal when she gets taken, it was like really quick. Running up and down the stairwell, didn't care all that much. So because of not only the lack of action, the lack of quality action, I'm going to go down to a 7. But my plot's a 10.
Oh
Plot's a
wow.
10.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'm making up ground because everything that was suspenseful because I loved how things were playing out. And I was on the edge of my seat at a few things that should have been very routine and boring, but just it was all crafted because I was bought into the narrative.
Yeah. So essentially, we had the same score, but I'm giving it a 9 because just a little bit of the stuff that we brought up with the Yasser Arafat stuff, but the twist at the end also elevates it. Maybe I'll go 9.5.
Yeah, I was taken out with the Yusuf conversation, but the twist at the end made me go back and say,
Right.
"Oh, I like
Right.
books where you have to work for it."
And then by end, I'm a 5. Fully bought into hook, line, and sinker, everything.
Yeah, yeah, I am too. But that's where I'm going to ding the half for the things of like the Yusuf conversation at first, or
Mhm.
even the Yasser Arafat conversation and some pacing at the end. And just again, I didn't buy completely into some of the shootouts just because I wasn't given enough to think they were real. They were just quick kind of this person shoots this person shoots this person points a gun and misses, or doesn't take the shot. It just like a few little moments that weren't top notch. But for a 4.5, like yeah, I'm right there.
Okay. Mhm.
Bad guys. Tariq, Kamal, for a while, Yusuf.
These are some good villains.
This is
I
good.
think it's a solid like 4.5.
I'm flirting with the 5, man. We haven't had villains this good in a
Really?
while.
I know.
I don't know if it's just because I haven't read a good villain story in a while. The way he pops up, he's speaking
Yeah, you're right.
Portuguese, he's speaking English. When he even puts on the waiter's uniform, he's like, I
Hmm.
have to become whatever his name was, Rodriguez or something. I have to become that person. And the Tunisian dates, he gets the Tunisian dates, knowing Arafat likes it. I think the little details of Tariq, the scene on the boat where he kills the girl, overdoses her. I think I'm going 5.
He fights the brother. Yeah, no, you're right. It's a 5. It's a 5.
He even has to think through like I can't just shoot the brother because my gun isn't silenced, but I don't have time to put the silencer on. I don't have time to
Right.
use another weapon. I have to do this now, then get out of here. Yeah, yeah. 5. Good guys. Damn, I wish we could give good guys to Jacqueline or Sarah Halevi.
Well, we can. Like, it's not just. I think if you wanted to just talk about Gabriel Allon, he's not definitely not a 5 yet.
No, agreed.
Um, but when you throw in like the Shamrons, even
Ugh,
Yusef to an extent,
yeah.
um, Peel, these other little
Peel.
characters,
Isherwood.
Isherwood.
Stone
The
is
cast of
funny.
characters is intriguing. So maybe not a
Yeah.
perfect 5, but I think it's a 4.5.
Yeah, I think I'm going 4, which is really strange that so many things would be a 5 except for the main protagonist. Like,
Right,
and
right,
people might
right.
crucify me for that. Like, Gabriel Allon is so great. He's one of the best in the thriller verse. Yes, but not in this book.
Not
Like,
yet. Yeah,
so many people are talking about Gabriel Allon being this amazing figure. And I get that the seeds are here for him to be a very deep character. His psychology, maybe his skills eventually will show. But based on this book, he almost loses a point for me, where Sarah Halevi would be a 5. Ari Shamron is a 4.5. Peel, Isherwood, Stone are a 4.5. And he's the 4. So I think I got to go 4.
yeah. Okay.
That sounds tough, though. 4.5, 4.5. 4 is tough. 4.5.
No, but like, see, my free space are going to be some of those people.
Those
So
other people, yeah.
maybe I should bump that down to a 4 as well.
No, but those people were so good. They deserve the character. They deserve the good guy point.
Okay. All right. All right. Setting, man.
Setting. It's a strength. It's definitely a strength.
I, Very much so. It's up there with he's rivaling Brad Thor with some of these settings, and I felt like I was in a lot of these places: Montreal, France, New York. Taking us
Cornwall.
to Vienna, Cornwall, Amsterdam.
Yeah,
Um, we're in a lot of places, and you just felt immersed. At least I did,
sure.
in a lot of these places. So
Is it that five? Is it the elusive 5 out of 5?
No, I'm gonna give it a four.
Hmm.
It's got like really wow me. It's good. It didn't wow me.
Yeah, Coney Island Avenue. You could get the sense and the smells over there in Brooklyn. This is a tough one. I want to go five for Montreal, the shopping corridors. Even when he pops up at the pub in Portugal, he's on the boat in Amsterdam. I feel like I was on the canals, on the houseboat. And Cornwall, I mean, just the docks and the like cloudy, foggy, dark setting with these flashlights, across the water.
And where are we
Oh,
with the apartment? Like the apartment scene,
which apartment?
like Jacqueline's or Yusuf's apartment. Where is that in France?
Oh, no, I think that was London.
Oh, that's right. We're in London.
I think it was London. And I think it might have, or maybe not that apartment, but there was a scene in Bayswater, which I think is where George Smiley lives. So I wonder if that was a
Right.
nod. Do I go five? Dang. I don't want to keep pulling out the
4.5.
halves. I don't want to keep pulling out the halves.
I'm doing it four and a
I
half.
think I need a
For
half,
now.
4.5. This is like a half book. It comes so close, yet there's just these small tweaks. Yeah, I got to go 4.5. It's close.
Okay. My
And
favorite
cover.
topic.
Cover time, baby. Zoom is telling us we have 5 minutes left for covers, so we're going to get a condensed rant here. But Chris, start us off.
I
What do you
don't
think of these?
I don't love these covers.
They're
They're
okay.
very
They're
they're
okay.
okay. They're kind of all over the place.
They're mid.
The My favorite one is the one with the brushstroke. Um, the cover B,
Really? Okay.
because you're getting like that sense of like the artist, playing into that. I guess like, some of the other ones have like famous works of art, they sort of bring that aspect into it, but none of them will make me want to pick up this book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe A, I think might be the only one. Gabriel's a loner in a lot of senses.
Mm,
He's
for
walking through
sure.
this red European old cobblestone street. Could that be him doing one of his art restorations? I think A gets that solitude factor of it, and it could be where it could be Vienna, it could be Cornwall, it could be anywhere they really go across Europe.
London, France. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. London, France could be anything. So I think the biggest boost for me would be A. It's clearly my favorite. B is neat as a concept. C is,
They're in London and he's an art restorer.
and
So
they
I
got the art
guess,
restorer, yeah. But as a design, I
um,
think the design is just so poor.
yeah,
D, I'm glad they focused on the hands. That's the audiobook one.
that's the
The
other
hands
book.
are
Yeah.
important as
Hmm.
an art
Yeah.
restorer.
Cause he's like an art restorer with the gun.
Yeah.
I like the lettering on that one. Kind of like a mirrored in this like, oh, and we got a George Bedell. Great audiobook narration.
Oh, George Guidall was fantastic.
Good to be back in good hands.
This was the prime George Goodell, the height of George Goodell for sure. He
Yeah,
nailed
and
every character.
none of the European. This one has a lot of European covers. They're
E
all
these ruins, ancient ruins. I mean, is it Israel? What is it? We never go there. I was
mu-
waiting for a scene on like an ancient
must
relic of a fortress.
it must be Israel.
Yeah, is it Masada? Like I don't know what it was, and then we never really go to a place like that. E was a mistake. F, I have a face
It could be
problem.
Jacqueline.
It could
Yeah,
be
but
Jacqueline. It
we
could be Sarah.
yeah,
I got a bit of a face problem. Is this guy Yusuf? Is this guy Gabriel? I'll put it this way. I don't know what country that is, but some sort of Eastern European Slavic text. That is definitely some Russian kind of looking cover for sure.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'll give it props there. G is kind of boring. Layout's funky.
Mhm.
Can't see much on it. It's a little too dark. And H, no one really snipes anybody through a window. It was a car bomb in Tunis, so I don't
Right.
know what's going on there. But I kind of like this Botticelli looking woman from some sort of painting. It's kind of
Yeah.
shooting through her cheek, but it's not. It's just awkward. It could be cool, but it's awkward. H.
I don't know. These are like a solid like three and a half.
Yeah. A brings me up a little, maybe to 3.5. Yeah, 3 could be justified. Now, There's a second graphic I'll have to print at some point or post at some point. And there's a couple that are kind of cool for more international covers. So if we do post those, the first one, top left, is really cool. It's got the car bomb exploding in the shadow of a figure. It's almost like
That
Gabriel's
is
just
cool.
looking on as the car goes off. Yeah. There's one with a Star of David, which is neat. There's a couple of Chinese versions which we haven't seen. Like this book has been published in a lot of different ways. And then there's one with a bloody knife and a bloody paintbrush right on top of each other.
The
That's a neat
bloody
touch.
the bloody paintbrush is cool. So
Yeah, exactly. Bloody paintbrush is neat. I think for all this, I gotta land at a 3.5. Cover A gets me that half up to 3.
okay. All right, my free space it goes to Peel. I freaking love this character. I like it. It's a little touch point. It gives a. I think it could be a nice connective tissue if we go back to him in every book. You know, it shows his. It's his son that he never had. You know, this downtrodden kid who just wants to, maybe kicks him under as a little bit of a mentoree. Yeah, Peel's my free space 5.
Love that. I think
Could have won Jacqueline.
I'm going Jacqueline. Jacqueline, her
Yeah,
backstory, perfectly crafted. What a character. I would love to see a new Sarah Halevi book. Sarah Halevi book 2. I'd be here for it.
hmm
So, yeah. Less than a minute to go here, Chris. How about you thank the patrons? What a book. I end up with a 44. You get a 45. That is a great score for the Thriller podcast.
yeah. No, great score. Great score. Yeah. All right, I enjoyed talking to you, Kill Artist. Definitely have to revisit Daniel Silva again. Before we get cut off, I need to thank our patrons, including our Deputy Director, Sherry F., our Special Operator, Jason C., our Special Agents, Ben, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Don, Peggy, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review to all 3 seasons of the Thriller Podcast at thrillerpod.com. Check out our new store, thrillerpod.com, and Thriller Podcast back on Instagram and always on Twitter. And as always, just like Gabriel, be Gabriel.